Hello, Foresee. It is I, your long-distance English teacher. How are you all? I hope you're okay. I'm fine. It's fine. I mean, it's teaching. The fun part is you guys sitting here by myself, emailing. It's less fun. So I miss you. That's something you should know straight off the bat here. The plan generally for the next few weeks is for me to do our lessons via video. So I'm going to post all the links to each chapter, to my reading and discussion of each chapter on Moodle. And then I'll also tell you where I'm up to on SOM, and you can go and listen to them at your heart's content. Of course, we have no idea when the test for this will be. The plan for the test was to make it a book review, so to get you to give your personal feelings about the book, and make sure that we do it in such a way that we know that you've read it, which is not always easy, but that was sort of the plan. I have no idea whether this test is going to happen, when we're going to go back to school. I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't freaking know. I don't know. But we're going to keep reading it because, some things we do for more than just tests, and I like to think that what we do in English class is more than just for tests. So we're going to keep doing our reading and study regardless of whether or not we're going to get tests. So today's lesson is about Chapter 7 of the English Patient. I usually do these videos in two parts. So I've already been making some videos for my third form on Animal Farm and fifth form on 1984, so I've made a few now. Not that I'm getting better at it. Anywho, so we're up to Chapter 7 of the English Patient, so we're going to talk about Chapter 7 today, and I'll usually put it in two parts, otherwise it takes ages for it to load, and that annoys me. Now, I'm going to be talking through this bad boy, which is the piece of paper questions that I have on Moodle for you for each chapter. So I'm actually going to go through sort of question by question. I'm not going to read the whole Chapter 7 to you. I'm not going to do that to myself. It will just take way too long. But I'm going to go through sort of the key moments to help you read it, because there's bits in here that are quite difficult, pardon me. Okay, so if I were you, I would have this video open and then have this open on another screen. I've put the Word document copy on Moodle for you, so you could actually fill it in as you went or as you read, if that's what you would like to do. You don't have to do it that way, it's totally your call, but that's something I've made available to you as well. So Chapter 7 is not super long, it's about 25 pages long. It's set in 1940. In England, and it's basically looking back. It's all about Kip, and it's all about his time in England when he first arrived in England. So at sometimes we've got Kip is the voice of the narrator, so we actually feel like this is Kip talking to Hannah in the tent, and sometimes it's more like an omniscient narrator, like the opening sentence talks about Kip in the third person. So it's the way the story is told, it changes throughout the chapter, which can make it a little difficult. The tone of the chapter is also quite mixed in places. It's partially quite a technical, basically a technical discussion or analysis of bomb manufacturing and disposal. So the different types of bombs that were used in World War II, and how essentially to pull them apart and to stop them from exploding. So there's that, and I find that really interesting, to be honest, though a little bit beyond me. I'm not very good at technical stuff. There's that. There's a bit of a history lesson about what happened in England during World War II when it comes to being bombed, and also combined with sort of Kip's musings around racism and colonialism, how he was treated by the English when he went to England as an Indian man, what it was like for him back in India, his relationship with his family. So it's a reasonably interesting chapter in the sense that it sort of meld certain things together, and it's nice that it is quite linear. Like, we're going back in time. Of course, the villa is in 1945 with Hannah and the English Patient, and Kip and Caravaggio are all there together, and this is looking back in time, and Kip sort of remembering his time in England at the beginning of the war. Okay, now The chapter opens in quite a challenging way, I think, because it starts talking about this horse. And, the opening sentence is, Kirpal Singh stood where the horse's saddle would have lain across its back. And then if you didn't know what he was talking about, I can imagine it would be quite confusing. So I've put on this handout for you guys, I've got here it's reversed. I've got here a picture of what he's talking about. So in England, there are these very ancient chalk horses that have somehow been carved. I have no idea how they did it. They don't even know how long it's been there or exactly what the purpose was originally, but there are these giant horses, chalk horses carved onto hillsides in England. And at the beginning of the war, beginning of the Blitz, when the Germans started bombing England, just very intensive bombing of England, the horses were one of the locations where bombs would land, because it's almost like a target. So they covered the horses, eventually there's 7 of them, with camouflage so they wouldn't be a target for bombing. But before they did that, there was some bombs found on the horses. And you can see in that second picture on the right, 2 little dots sort of in between the legs of the in sort of the belly, groinal region of the horse. There's 2 people sitting there, and that gives you a sense of the size, right? So then you can see in the left-hand picture, like, you've got that hill there. They're quite a big horse, white horse. So that's where he is. He's in Westbury, which is where one of these horses are, and that's sort of where the chapter opens and where it ends. So on page page 193 through to 216, it opens with Kip on that horse, disposing of that bomb, pulling that bomb apart, and the chapter ends with him back there with Miss Mordaunt as well. So it's sort of bookended with this moment on the horse with Miss Mordaunt. Okay, so the chapter opens and we're at this giant horse, and Kip is disposing of a bomb. And we have some musings about that and sort of creating the image, and then we get on page 194 a little bit of insight into Kip's sort of personal background. On page 194, it says he was the second son. The oldest son would go into the army. The next brother would be a doctor. A brother after that would become a businessman. An old tradition in his family, but all that had changed with the war. He joined a Sikh regiment and was shipped to England. So that little part there is just to show that he's from a very traditional Sikh family where everything is sort of very regimented. Like, it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you're the oldest son, you go into the army. The second son always it becomes a doctor. So that's what Kip was supposed to do. He was supposed to become a doctor, but the war changes everything. And I really like the inclusion of an Indian character in this novel, because so often when we tell the story of World War II, we forget that it wasn't just happening in Europe. Wasn't just America versus Japan. It was also all these colonial states, all these colonial countries, India, Australia, that participated in that and fought on the side of the British. And in the case of Indians, or for example Indigenous Australians, Indigenous Canadians, many of these people fought in the war on the side of the British, on the side of the Allies, but got very little respect for what they did, and only recently have started to get remembered and acknowledged for the fact that they participated. Racism was at the core of what started World War II, and it wasn't just the Nazis being racist, and that's sort of some of the things that Kip is musing on throughout this chapter. Now, page 194 moves on to give a sort of a very basic, this is what a bomb is, this was what it has in it, and then it gives us, on page 195, it continues to give details about what different types of bombs there were in World War II, different sizes, different contents and chemicals, and explosion times, and how they would work. Now, question number 1, I asked you what are the most dangerous types of bombs according to the narrator, and the answer to that question is on page 195. The most dangerous bombs were those dropped from low altitudes, which were not activated until they had landed. These unexploded bombs buried themselves in cities and fields and remained dormant until their trembler contacts were disturbed by a farmer's stick, a car wheel's nudge, the bounce of a tennis ball against a casing, and then they would explode. So these bombs would be dropped from planes, and then they would sort of lie all over the countryside and would only explode when somebody touched them in some way, which is, of course, terrifying. And we hear at the bottom of that page that the Blitz began, and then 1 month after the beginning of the Blitz, we already have 2,500 unexploded bombs. And then by September, we're at 3,700, so 3,700 unexploded bombs. So this is obviously just a massive crisis. It's incredibly dangerous to have all these bombs just lying around the countryside for anyone to run into. And so they create very, very quickly these bomb disposal units. Now, these bomb disposal units had a life expectancy of about 10 weeks. So, you would get trained up, and then eventually, and you would start disposing of bombs, and then eventually you'd make a mistake, and then you would die. So, heroes work, but not necessarily something you would survive. Now, from page 196, we start to hear about the character of Lord Suffolk. Now, Lord Suffolk is not in the novel for a large part, but he is an important character because he really, in the opinion of Kip, sums up all of the good things, all the strengths of the British people. So for pages 196 through to 198, we have basically Kip's impression of Lord Suffolk, what he thinks of him, what he talks about, how he made Kip feel, and I think the key thing about Lord Suffolk that we should admire is that he just really looks beyond race. He's incredibly kind and welcoming to Kip. It's not like he ignores the fact that he's from a different country. He acknowledges that, but he sees that Kip has so much talent in bomb disposal, and that that to him is he doesn't judge. He's really sort of determined and brave and welcoming, and there's things to really admire about Lord Suffolk, and that's why Kip says that he's the best of the English. So those 2 or 3 pages there are sort of tell us a bit about Lord Suffolk, and that's question 2 that I've just spoken about there. Now we jump back here. See, again, it's not being as linear perhaps as we'd like. It's difficult to always follow. So you see there at page 198 the beginning of that second paragraph there, which starts the drive to the chalk horse at Westbury. So the chapter starts with them already at the chalk horse. Now we're hearing about the drive and his musings on Lord Suffolk's character, and then at page 199, that where it says Corporal Singh had been befriended and he would never forget it. From those paragraphs on, we start to hear about before going to the White Horse, before meeting, leading up to him becoming a bomb disposal officer. So, the linear nature of this it's sort of difficult to pin down. So from page 199, we have the application of Kip to become a sapper, to become somebody who's disposing of bombs, and we see why he wants to do it. He discusses there why he's made this decision. We hear that he's the only Indian there, so he's the only Indian man to apply. And then sort of the moment of the application, how he goes in, and the secretary is sort of staring at him. And on page 200 he says, the English, they expect you to fight for them, but they won't talk to you. Now that's question number 3. Now, this is reflective, I think, of the broader treatment that Kip has experienced in England. That he's finding it hard to make friends. He's finding it hard to connect with people. People are judging him very much based on his race, and so he's basically thinking that this secretary, Miss Morton, is one of many, yet another sort of negative experience based on race. And that reflects the idea that, the English, the Indians are good enough to fight in the war, but why are you not giving us the respect that we deserve? But of course, and I'm on question 3 right now, it turns out that he's not right about this. We learn on page 201 that Miss Morton wasn't, judging him for his race at all, or, it's not that she didn't want to talk to him. She actually really liked him. Oh. And, it's my hot water bottle. I'm cold. Always cold. And it's not that she didn't like him. She actually, thought he was the best choice. Lord Suffolk says that she's an excellent judge of character and had liked Kip from the beginning. So, I don't know whether there's supposed to be a broader message in there, but we learn on page 201 that she's a splendid judge of character and that she had already selected him. So you see how he feels very at home with these people. They really are welcoming to him. There's things about them that he finds really amusing and charming, that everybody's laughing and happy, and that Miss Morton, they all drink and have a good time, and there's a real sort of sense of family, even though Sikhs don't drink, so Kip doesn't drink, but, there's a real sort of welcoming sense of family that he really appreciates. There's also some really interesting stuff in there about being an Indian and how that was both an advantage and a disadvantage for Kip when he's trying to become a sapper. He believes that he would easily get the job as a sapper if it weren't for his race. So he's sort of expecting to be rejected. He doesn't yet know what kind of man Lord Suffolk is. He doesn't know about who Miss Morton is. So he sees that he's better at the actual technical exam to become a sapper, to become a bomb disposal expert, but he's worried. He thinks he won't get it because of his race. And he talks about there, and I found this quite interesting at the bottom of page 200, that he'd come from a country where mathematics and mechanics were natural traits. So if you live in a country where you need to make good and you need to use what you have and adapt things, you can't just throw something out and buy a new one. And so he's arguing that Indians are by their very nature sort of more handy and technical and mathematical than people who live in countries where there's sort of an abundance of stuff, which I found to be an interesting theory. Okay, where are we at? 17 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to stop now. And then I'm going to upload a second part because, otherwise it takes hours for it to upload on YouTube and blah, blah, blah. I'll be back. Bye, guys.